Hey, my name is Alex McGowan with McGowan Tax. Today we're going to be reacting to some videos that y'all sent me on YouTube and TikTok to talk about where some of these videos go wrong and might mislead you into taking the wrong action on your tax return. Or in some cases, they're saying the right things and I'm just expanding on it to give you a little bit more context into that situation. Thanks for sending over these videos. Please send me more as you come across them and I'm happy to react to them and give you my personal opinion from a professional international tax perspective.
The IRS determines if it is able to tax income based on source rules. Now remember, if you're a US citizen, you're subject to worldwide income. Doesn't matter where the money's sourced, the IRS is going to charge you for it. As a US citizen, here is how you can get around it. US citizen can form a foreign entity in a foreign country. Now the foreign entity is subject to the source rules and can argue the income that it makes is subject to tax in the foreign country it's located and not the IRS. This is what Apple does through Ireland.
So this is kind of correct, but definitely a major oversimplification for how international tax planning works. And I think this is where people get in a lot of trouble, is they assume they can just set up a foreign company and start earning income through it, and all of a sudden it's magically not subject to US taxation. The IRS is a little more nuanced than that. When you set up a foreign corporation, the concept he's talking about, and the thing that Apple, I guess you could say, also takes advantage of, is this concept of deferral. So you can set up a foreign company, that foreign company earns income, and you don't actually pay tax on it in the US until you take the money out. That concept of deferral can apply, but only in a very narrow set of circumstances. The IRS has anti-deferral rules like Subpart F and GILTI and Section 951 Cap A that are specifically designed so that you cannot defer your income, and you're going to have to pick up that tax from the foreign company regardless of the fact that it's foreign sourced and earned in a foreign company. For example, if you're in a foreign jurisdiction and you're not paying any tax there, you set up a company, let's say it's a service-based company where you're providing some sort of service and you have net income of $100. Well, the IRS under GILTI is going to make you pay tax on that $100 in the US regardless of the fact that it's foreign sourced and earned in a foreign company. So in that situation, that structure does not work, and there's a better structure for that type of scenario. There are situations where you can defer. For example, if you're in a foreign country where the tax rate is high enough to meet the high tax exception, or under the current rules, you could get around GILTI if your fixed asset base is high enough in the foreign country. So there are scenarios where what he said is correct, where you can earn foreign source income and not pay tax on it in the US, but it's definitely not something you can just assume is the case by setting up a foreign company. It's something you need to plan for in advance so that you know exactly how the IRS is going to treat your type of income and your type of business activity, because once you start a structure like that, it can be very expensive to unwind after the fact. So if you have international tax questions, reach out to us at McGowanTax.com before you get into these types of structures, and we can make sure you're set up on the right path on the front end.
Are you an American about to move abroad? Well, don't miss out on this tax form, or it could cost you. So if you're planning an international move, then you need to fill out the form 8802. Filling that form out and submitting it will give you the US tax residency, which is form 6166. This certificate is proof that you are a US resident. Even though you're living internationally, you are going to pay US taxes, so you're not going to get taxed where you're going to be working or living.
If you're looking to move abroad, please don't just download this form 8802, fill it out, and send it to the IRS without talking to someone that knows the actual reason why you'd fill this out. The form 8802 is an application to get a certificate of residency, form 6166, from the IRS. You only need that in certain situations, and with individuals, it's actually pretty rare that you need that certificate. Here are some scenarios where you might need it, particularly if you're living in a foreign country and you earn US source income that country's not going to tax under the treaty. So it's really a treaty claim. So let's say you're living in Switzerland and you have a home in the US that you're going to sell. So you're going to have a capital gain, right, on the sale of that home. Well, Switzerland's tax law, and under the treaty between the US and Switzerland, it says that that home sale is US sourced and not taxable in Switzerland. But in order to qualify under the treaty for that exemption, Switzerland needs to know that you're actually a US citizen and a US tax resident resident under that scenario. So that's when you'd get the 6166, and you can give that to Switzerland to document the fact that you're eligible for that benefit under the treaty. But just for regular, like if you're earning wage income or service income, that's going to be foreign sourced income. So let's say you have a service-based business, or maybe you're employed and you move to the Netherlands, which is another treaty country. If you're earning income in the Netherlands, that's Netherlands sourced income. And the Form 6166 is unnecessary, and it's not going to help you with anything because it's taxable in the US as a US citizen, and it's taxable in the Netherlands as a Netherlands resident. The US gives you a credit for the taxes paid in the Netherlands, or you're taking the foreign earned income exclusion to exempt it altogether in the US. But either way, Netherlands doesn't need to know that you're a US citizen or a US tax resident. It's only in these very specific situations where you're exempt from tax in the foreign country because you're a US citizen under the treaty that you need that Form 6166 to show the foreign country that you are indeed who you say you are, which is a US tax resident or a US citizen. So that's a very narrow set of circumstances. So don't get into a paperwork battle with the IRS over Form 6166 just because somebody told you that you need to file this if you move abroad. If you have questions about your move abroad and how this may impact your taxes and how to do it efficiently, reach out to us at McGowanTax.com. I'm happy to have a consult with you personally, and we'll figure out a tax plan that makes sense for you.
There's only 3 countries in the world that make their citizens file tax returns on their worldwide income no matter where they live: North Korea, Eritrea, and the United States of America.
So I've been giving this same line to clients for years, but actually I never mentioned North Korea because I kind of forget that one, but most of my US expats aren't going to North Korea, so I haven't run across that situation. But I did have a very interesting situation to this guy's point where I had a client that was a US citizen. They were also a citizen of Eritrea, and they lived in the UK. This person was subject to triple taxation because they had citizenship-based taxation in the US and Eritrea. In Eritrea, it's a little bit different because it's not income tax-based taxation like it is in the US. In Eritrea, it works a little bit differently than the US. They have a flat tax, I think, on total income, or maybe it's on assets. That's really the perfect storm of international tax planning because it's a very unique position where you're having to deal with taxation on the same income in 3 jurisdictions at the same time. So unfortunately, I didn't get to actually work with that client, so we didn't figure out a solution that I could tell you about necessarily. But yeah, it's an interesting point. The US is definitely known as the citizenship-based taxation model of the world, but we're not the only ones. Eritrea and North Korea are there as well. So my suggestion is all my US citizens out there, if you're going to get a citizenship somewhere else, I would think real hard before getting North Korean citizenship for a variety of reasons, as well as Eritrean citizenship, because now you've just potentially subjected yourself to triple taxation if you live somewhere else. If you have questions about your international tax situation or need help filing your tax returns, reach out to us at McGowanTax.com. I'd be happy to set up a call with you.
The US passport is the worst passport in the world. You pay taxes everywhere you go. The US controls everything in your life. You're banned from visiting multiple countries. It's really not a passport that you want.
I have opposing feelings when I see videos like this, and there's a lot of people out there that push renunciation of US citizenship from a financial perspective, and I understand it. I mean, economically, you can definitely make an argument that being a US citizen is expensive. You're going to pay high taxes, and you can definitely set up a tax plan where you move to a country where you don't pay tax, renounce your US citizenship. You can get a citizenship somewhere else that still has good travelability, and now you've saved a bunch of taxes. And I think that can make sense in some cases. Like, for example, I work with people that are what you call accidental Americans. So they never even spent any time in the US. Maybe they were born outside the US with a US passport. And so that US passport doesn't really have any emotional connection to them. There's a lot of people out there, though, where it means something to be an American. It means something to have a US passport. And simply focusing your entire decision making on what makes the most economic sense is not always the best thing to do, in my opinion. So is there a segment of the population where renunciation makes sense? Yes, and I have that conversation with clients a lot, but making sure that it's not an emotional decision, but you may feel a connection to the country you're from, like the United States. But I just feel like this is a decision that goes beyond purely economics, and it needs to be something you think hard and long about before you actually decide to give up that passport completely. There are tax planning opportunities things in the US that we work with our clients on a daily basis to make sure that they're paying a reasonable tax rate at the end of the day. But if your goal is simply to pay zero taxes, then I agree. Dropping your US citizenship is really the only way to do it as a United States citizen. And don't get me wrong, I work with a lot of clients on renunciations and expatriations, typically because the same rule applies to some green card holders that give up their green card. And I can make a lot of money doing these expatriation forms just like other international tax providers do. I'm not personally incentivized one way or the other to help people with their renunciations or not. I think it's a stretch to say that the US passport is the worst passport in the world. Sure, you can make an argument that from an economic perspective, you can save a lot of taxes by not being a US citizen, by moving to a foreign country that does not have taxes. But it shouldn't be a knee-jerk reaction to look at the financial situation and automatically say, I should renounce my US passport, go get a passport somewhere else, move abroad. That may be the answer. But what I like to do with my clients is make sure they understand what is their actual tax position in the US, because maybe it's just that they're paying more tax right now than they have to because they're not taking advantage of certain tax opportunities that are there currently as a US citizen. So I like to work through that with my clients first so that they're making an informed decision and not just an emotional one because they feel like they're paying too much taxes today. If you have a question about your US tax position, moving abroad, expatriation, I'm happy to talk to you about it and personalize a plan for you. Reach out to us on my website and I'd be happy to set up a call.